You are listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
What's up, everyone? Did you know that Patrick Mahomes is undefeated against the Denver Broncos in his career, a perfect 10-0? You probably did know that, but it's always a fun reminder. Anyways, I'm BJ Kissel. This is KCSN Update, our daily Chiefs show and podcast here at KC Sports Network, presented by our good friends at DraftKings. Thanks for hanging out today. Please hit that like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, make sure to go and search KCSN. You can find all of our different channels that way, covering all the local colleges, plus the Royals, plus sporting, plus the KC Current. Got a little something for everybody here. And since it's Friday, you know the deal. We are going to be joined soon by Pro Football Focus's Trevor Sikkema to get his three key matchups in this game on Sunday against the Denver Broncos. Have had a couple of fun conversations over the last couple of days. Quick plug on those. Talked with Dr. Amy Patel. She's the Chiefs representative for the 2022 NFL Fan of the Year contest, and her work in breast cancer research and care and radiology. That in itself, plus what the NFL is doing with these Fan of the Year contests, go check that episode of Sometimes Weekly Sports and Stuff. It posted either late Monday night or it was Tuesday morning, but check it out on the Chiefs channel. It's also going to be up on our YouTube. And then had a fun conversation with Carrington Harrison from 610 Sports Radio in Kansas City, where he basically said he's not excited at all to watch this game on Sunday against the Denver Broncos. Had to push back a little bit. Chiefs fans, for those of us that are old enough to remember, haven't always been great. And so I don't want to normalize or take for granted playing against bad teams, because there was a time that we were a team like the Denver Broncos are right now. And that wasn't a whole lot of fun. I watched those games, so I'm sure going to watch it when we're on the other side of it. But we're going to bring Trevor on here in just a minute to get his thoughts on the matchup against the Broncos and what he expects, and some cool stats and nuggets for that one. But first, here's a quick word from our friends at DraftKings. The fans, the tradition, the glory. There's nothing more thrilling than college football. It's bowl season and the action is far from over. My go-to betting for DraftKings is DraftKings Sports, or my go-to betting for betting is DraftKings. I'll get through this. Is DraftKings Sportsbook, one of America's top-rated sportsbooks apps. You know I'm all in on the Sugar Bowl as a K-State alum, although watching that KU Liberty Bowl against Arkansas was a lot of fun, not going to lie. Pretty disappointing ending, but it was a fun one to watch. But K-State going up against Alabama, 6.5 points they're getting right now, which I feel like is pretty respectable considering Bryce Young, Will Anderson going to play in that game. I can't wait to see what Will Howard, Deuce Vaughn, Keen Felix, what those guys do in this one. I can't feel any disrespect based on that line. But right now, new customers can place a $5 pregame moneyline bet on a college football team to win and get $150 in free bets if they do. Plus, everyone can combine multiple bets for a bigger payout with DraftKings same-game parlays. Personally, with the NFL stuff, I've enjoyed the longer season plays. The Patrick Mahomes for MVP that I got at plus 900 was a good find at the time, and it's looking good. And then Nick Bolton to lead the league in tackles is within striking distance. Again, I got that one at plus 3,500. He sits in third right now. He's got to have a couple big games, but not out of the question considering we saw his 17 tackle performance against the Seahawks last week. He's got 2 weeks left to play to climb back up into that. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use code KCSN, and new customers place a $5 pregame moneyline bet on a college football team to win and get $150 if your team does win. That's code KCSN only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details. All right, now let's welcome on Pro Football Focus's Trevor Sikkema to get his thoughts on this matchup. Trevor, I joked during the intro that I was talking with Carrington Harrison of 610 Sports Radio yesterday, and he's not really excited. He doesn't even really want to watch this game just because of what's going on in Denver. He's like, I don't want to watch bad football. And I'm at the point, it was like, I'm a diehard Chiefs fan. I watched every Chiefs game since I could knew what I was watching. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to watch games just because another team's bad. We've been the bad team before, and I'm going to enjoy the game regardless of how awful it might be to watch on one side of it.
Denver is in a tough spot, man. I mean, you look at what happened with Carolina Panthers earlier this year. They move on from Matt Rule, and all of a sudden they get this motivational boost, right? It's like a lot of things are going wrong around them. They get rid of their head coach. Steve Wilkes takes over as the interim head coach, and all of a sudden it's like the team got better. Like the team wanted to play football a lot more. I don't really think that's going to be the case with the Broncos. A couple of Broncos players kind of come out and talked about how much they liked and appreciated Nathaniel Hackett, how they probably feel like he got the short end of the stick in a lot of things. And there's a lot of rumors that swirl around with Russell Wilson. I don't know exactly what's true, but there hasn't really been a shortage of stories or instances or rumors, whispers that teammates don't love Russ, and I know that
Yeah.
some sure do, but and that's why I don't want to be spreading false information, but there have been a lot of things that have come out, and if those things are true, if
Yeah.
it comes out where it's okay, well, Russell is a lot of the division in the locker room is souring a lot of what's going on in there, and you fired the head coach, which a lot of players like, simply because you can't fire Russell Wilson. Well, then all of a sudden, Broncos probably aren't going to get that interim head coach motivational bump that we've seen other teams get. Instead, it really might be the other way around, and you might see a very unmotivated Denver team. They're prideful dudes.
Yeah.
They take pride in their craft, and I don't want to say that they're just going to lay down and be terrible, but haven't beaten the Chiefs since 2015. Came up short last time. A lot of turmoil even since week 14. If the Chiefs get up big again, this one could get ugly, and I would not expect a major comeback like we saw last time they faced off.
It was, don't talk trash if you're the Chiefs. Don't give him any reason to get excited, because even at least with the Panthers and making the move, it was, young, energetic guy wants to be a head coach, may have a chance to really turn things around and earn himself a spot. These coaches know, hey, I'm probably not going to be here next year. I mean, I don't know if those assurances have been made or what that looks like in Denver right now, but it's not even like these guys are playing for a staff that's evaluating them for their future. Yes, they're putting stuff on tape, but it's, to your point, it's got to be really hard for these guys to get motivated and to go out there, other than just being professionals, which they do early. They get down early, and then here we go again. And Russell comes to the sideline talking with a football over his mouth. So they can't read his lips of the things that he's saying. We saw the social clips.
Right.
I think the best explanation I've seen, I've never talked to Russell Wilson, never talked to a player that has played with Russell Wilson about Russell Wilson. But the best explanation, I saw Jeff Schwartz, and he said this a long time ago. He goes, it's almost like Russ was a method actor pretending to be what he thought a good quarterback leader should look like.
Mm-hmm.
And now he's so far into it, he can't get out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just pretending in a way. And maybe he's a nice enough guy, and it's not a personal thing with him as much as it is they just don't believe him when he does things. The run pass stuff early in the year made me cringe.
Yeah.
That he had the players on the sideline. You can't do that with professionals. And that's the kind of stuff I could see him turning off. The other problem, and we'll get to the matchup, because everybody, I think, in the country has been spending a lot of time talking about this and sharing their thoughts. But, you don't see a lot of guys come out and defend him either. There's a lot of this chatter about guys and we're liking this. You don't see somebody coming out and really defending him and saying, besides maybe Brett Rippon, to the offensive line, which is about the first time I've seen anybody kind of say anything. The rumors of Dalton Reisner, somebody talked to Dalton Reisner, knows Dalton Reisner a little bit. That was a little out of character, a little surprised to see him getting into it on the sideline, which just tells me how bad it must be. But you don't see a lot of people coming out and defending him in that kind of way. But let's get into the matchup.
Sure.
Start on the offensive side. Talk about Russell Wilson of the Broncos offense. What on that side of things are you looking forward to as far as the Chiefs defense, how they cover these guys? Last time they played, Jerry Jeudy just absolutely tore them apart.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like Russell wants to be a pocket passer, right? When we've talked about Russ having frustrations in Seattle about not doing what he wanted to do. Well, what did Russell Wilson want to do? Well, I think that he really wanted to be a pocket passer. And Russell Wilson was very good. And a big part of his game was escaping the pocket, extending plays, making plays outside of the tackles. And he didn't really want to do that as much. So forcing his way out of Seattle, getting to Denver, he kind of came over here and signed the long extension under the understanding that he was going to have a major role in what was going on with the offense. And I feel as though what he really wanted was to be this pocket passer. Now, in order to be a pocket passer, you're kind of hanging in the pocket a little bit longer. You're waiting for those longer plays to develop. And I think some of our grading numbers show that teams are figuring that out. When you play quarters coverage against the Denver Broncos and against Russell Wilson specifically, they just have a 43.1 overall passing grade. Obviously not great when teams have played single high against them, which have opened up a little bit more passing opportunities because there's less guys in coverage, or less guys on the back end, I should say. Those numbers then are in the 60s for both cover 1 and cover 3. So if you play, I don't want to say like conservatively as if they're not going to be like aggressive or playing fast, but if you allocate more resources to the deep portions of the field in coverage, that clearly forces Russell Wilson to panic a little bit. Like, I think he wants to hold on to the ball. He wants to attack downfield. And when teams don't allow him to do that, he gets uncomfortable in the pocket. The offensive line has not held up the way that it's needed to. And you see him take a lot of sacks. You see him make a lot of bad decisions. And so I think it's a philosophy thing combined with what the Broncos just don't have in their personnel and what's not working well. And they were never really able to figure out how to counter that. I don't know if it was stubbornness. I don't know if it was personnel based, but for the Chiefs, they're double-digit point favorites in this game, right? They should win this football game. As long as you don't get over-aggressive to the point where you are oversetting and you are allowing them to, kind of like what we saw in Week 14, just capitalize on these opportunities and these turnovers to get touchdowns out of nowhere. If you don't allow that to happen, if you play, I'll say, a little bit more conservative, a little bit more disciplined, a little bit more, hey, keep everything in front of you instead of saying we got to attack the ball, and get aggressive, get risky. If you do that, the Broncos have shown so many times already this year that they will give you the game. That's where this Broncos team is.
Yeah.
That's where this offense is. They will give you the win as long as you keep things in front of you and stay disciplined. Don't get too risky about it. So I think quarters coverage, deploying a lot of guys a lot further back, keeping those deep zones really occupied with a lot of coverage players is going to frustrate the Broncos just like it has all year.
I'm really interested in be talking to people that know more and former players, people who know the schemes, because so much of Russell Wilson in Seattle, like it just, the player that we saw in Seattle compared to Denver, there's a lot made about the scheme being different, the West Coast system, whatever it is about how to read and do what Nathaniel Hackett wanted to do in that offense. Just really curious because there's so many times that he was missing open receivers and just doing some very simple, what we on the outside would say, like, that's a simple thing that you should know better. And you follow like protections and those kinds of things like Jeff Schwartz and Mitch Schwartz and all these guys that play the game talk about that. They're saying like Russell Wilson is broken. Is it broken, or is it just the system that he's learning is not the way that he has ever understood football, to like how to read a defense, what his cues are? I'll never forget. I had a conversation with a guy that used to play for Andy Reid, was quarterback, and his name's Brett Favre, but I didn't really want to talk about him. But he used to say that he would, the way that Andy Reid would teach him how to play the quarterback position, he would tailor everything to the quarterback he was talking to simplify it for how that quarterback's brain worked. And for Brett Favre saying he didn't know how to read a defense, wasn't joking, like it was being serious, that Andy would teach him on every given play against every look at one guy and know where to go with the football. Mm-hmm. He's like, that one guy will tell you everything you need to know about where to go with the football. And I'm just curious with Russell Wilson, if maybe he had something like that in Seattle, it doesn't have something like that in Denver, whether it's the scheme, the communication, the language, whatever it is. How do they get back to that for him? I hope they don't, as a Chiefs fan, but it's just, there's so many obvious things. And the wide receivers being so frustrated. Somebody made like a highlight film of KJ Hamler earlier in the year against the Colts, just losing his mind because
in the end zone,
felt like he was open.
Yeah.
And then last week it was Cortland Sutton on the outside. We've seen Jerry Jeudy lose his mind. Mm-hmm. And it's like, are they mad because they feel they're open, or are they mad because they know what they're being taught and what the reads are and the ball should be going to them and it's not?
I don't know the
exact.
What I mean? Yeah,
like,
no, I don't. It makes total sense what you are saying, and it feels like, right, these guys have been around the game a long time. Like Russell Wilson's been around the game a long time, so maybe it was as simple as Russ came into this knowing plays that worked. And maybe those plays worked early on. Maybe they worked in Seattle. Maybe they worked during training camp, whatever it is. These plays that worked early on. But then as the season kind of went on and defenses adjusted, as great defensive coordinators do once they get some tape on you, was that something where it was like, okay, we don't really have a counter. And maybe he just doesn't know what to do after that. Maybe it was a good original plan and they just don't have a way to counter it. Okay, now they're rotating a little bit this way. Now instead of watching this guy, you're watching this guy. Like you're keying in a different spot. And he's like, okay, well, I don't really know how to do that. I'm not as comfortable doing that. And maybe that leads to a lot of the frustration, because you're right. You can pick out different points when different receivers throughout the entire portion of the year have been visibly frustrated. So that these guys aren't blowing up like that because it's the first time they've gotten mad. No, they've gotten mad and gotten mad and gotten mad and gotten mad and tried to hide it. And that eventually boils over to what you've seen from some of those players. And they all want to win, right? They all have pride in the game. I don't think that at those points it was necessarily personal, but there is a root to it. And I really do wonder if that's what it is with Russell Wilson, where it's just, he's in his own head. You saying at the top, is he broken? Yeah, he's completely broken right now. I don't think there's really any doubt about that, but it's now the question becomes kind of, how do you fix it? Can you fix it? Because a lot of those issues about, okay, hey, this isn't working, we want to do something different. Is that what led him to leave Seattle? Like, did he not want to hear that? Is that going to be the same issue that they have in Denver? We'll see. And I think that's going to go into who they hire next as their head coach.
And how good does this make Pete Carroll look as a coach? To be able to get the most out of, like, there's so many layers. It to me, it's similar in a way to, like, we should know, especially this year, how good Mike Tomlin is as a head coach, and how he is one of the best coaches in the NFL, that people say, yeah, he's really good, but never really put him in some of those upper stratospheres that I think absolutely belongs. But after, like, the whole Antonio Brown thing, or it's like in Le'Veon Bell and like all these guys, like Mike Tomlin would handle things a lot better than he ever got credit for after the fact. Once we learn more, it seems like the same thing's happening with Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson.
Yep, I agree that you can point out the best coaches in the NFL are the ones who are around a long time, and the ones who are, they're often the ones who just constantly listen to their players, know how to deal with players, know how to keep a level head, know how to keep the locker room the way they need to, be a disciplinarian when you need to be a disciplinarian, be a friend of a player when you need to be a friend of a player, be an authority figure, be a role model, be someone who's just sitting next to them, putting your hand over their shoulder, whatever it is. Like the best coaches know how to be all of those things at the right times. And Mike Tomlin, absolutely one of the best.
And so is Andy. I mean, we know that.
Oh, yeah,
here, everybody
Reid,
listening, they're listening like, yeah, that's Andy Reid. That is
100%.
what he has been praised for his entire career. All right, let's move on. Talk a little bit about the other side of the ball in this matchup, because going into the first matchup, the Broncos, everybody making fun of the Broncos offense and Russell Wilson, but the defense had been playing so well that they'd only allowed more than 20 points like 3 times going into that game. Obviously, a little different now. Giving up 51 points last week to the Rams, firing their coach, motivations, everything that we just talked about being different. But if they come out and play well and all of that side stuff away, what about the matchup and what they like to do are you interested in seeing in this game on Sunday?
I think Broncos are going to come out strong on defense, right? For as much as I think there's going to be offensive struggles right out of the gate, because there always are in Denver, I really do think that this is a Broncos defense that's going to be motivated. It's going to be able to say, hey, screw the rest of the world, screw the outside noise. Let's go out and let's play the best game we can. We know we're one of the best defenses in the NFL. Now, when the Chiefs inevitably go up by multiple scores, does that continue? Okay, maybe you could probably get into some lesser motivation there, but this is a really good defense. Ejiro Evero, their defensive coordinator, has been one of the standout defensive coordinators in the NFL this year. They gave him a shot to be the interim head coach. He actually turned it down out of respect for Nathaniel Hackett because of how good of friends they are. I also think that a little bit of self-preservation went into that, because you don't want to have to take over the last 2 games, so I think that, but I do think that it was both. And I think that Ejiro is a very smart dude. He's going to be a head coaching candidate as we come into the offseason here. And this is still, even right now, what he can do against the Kansas City Chiefs is a massive bullet point for a resume that you would have as a potential head coach. Say, okay, look what I did against Kansas City Chiefs in week 14, right? 3 turnovers from Patrick Mahomes. I was able to be a catalyst for that comeback. We had defensive scores, all that. You get to do that again. Even if the Broncos don't get to win, you get to boast that. So what Denver has done all year pretty well is get after the quarterback. They've registered a lot of pressures, and some guys have been in and out of the lineup, but really, when they can get pressure up front, that secondary really gets to attack. And even those linebackers, too. The linebackers are playing well. Jewel Singleton, those guys, as we saw last time they lined up against the Chiefs with a couple of interceptions coming from the linebacker duo. So I think the pressure up front really is where it all starts. Now, the Chiefs, for as much as here on this show, we have talked about how their offensive tackle duo has allowed a lot of pressures this season. They actually held Denver pretty much in check last time they lined up against them. Only 2 sacks on the day, a pass rush win percentage of just 45.5, which is about 10% points lower than what it normally is on the season. They're about 55% of a pass rush win rate when trying to get after the quarterback this year. And so I think that, once again, that's going to be a major factor here, right? You don't want a ton of disruption coming from the defensive line, because that's when Sure, Patrick Mahomes is one of the best at dealing with pressure, but you even saw last game, some of those interceptions that he threw, it's a little bit of pressure in him. He's trying to get rid of the ball a little bit early. Those are plays that Patrick Mahomes has made in the past that he just didn't happen to because that's the game of football. The other guys get paid too. It's not going to be pinpoint deadly accurate and magic every single time. So the fact of the matter is that even though Patrick Mahomes is great against pressure, when you pressure him, it does leave the result susceptible to something that the Chiefs might not want and the Broncos too want. So mitigating that front pressure is huge because, of course, the Chiefs are good enough on offense to where if you can get Patrick Mahomes that extra second or two of time, he's kind of going to figure it out. So that's the big one to me is holding them below that 50% pass rush win percentage like they did last time.
Yeah, a couple things based on what you said. There's a lot to unpack there because 3 of Patrick Mahomes' 11 interceptions on the year came in this game, came last time they faced the Broncos defense. And if you were listening to our network, everybody spends a lot of time making fun of Denver because of Russell Wilson, the offense, but that defense, for all the points you just made, have been very, very good. They're getting after the passer. Patrick Surtain Jr., one of the best young cornerbacks in the NFL, can absolutely play football. But yeah, Patrick Mahomes forced a little bit. I think it was a little bit something different on each of those interceptions. Some of those were just great plays made by the defense, but yeah. And then on the offensive line, as far as the protection, I look back because it was in the midst of this Orlando Brown Jr. resurgence and what we've seen him playing really well since that loss against the Bengals. Orlando Brown Jr., and we talked about it this week on multiple shows with the PFF numbers of Orlando Brown Jr. being the top rated tackle over the last 6 weeks. Now, they haven't played the Bills or the Bengals. Those are 2 games that he struggled, and that seems to be the other side that people want to bring up. But the lens in which people have been talking and watching Orlando Brown Jr. since those games has been, I'm looking for something negative because I don't think he's very good. And I would like for people that are listening to this to go into this game saying, you know what, this guy's playing. I'm not saying he's the best tackle in football. And not saying just because he's graded out over the last 6 weeks that means he's the best, but he has improved. Nate Taylor has told us on Tuesdays he was dealing with a knee injury earlier in the year that he was kind of playing through. Didn't help. He didn't have a lot of camp. Then they had 2 quick games with that Thursday night opener after the first one. I played 2 games in like 5 days right off the top of the season when he wasn't real healthy. And maybe now he is starting to get healthy, but pay attention to this in the lens that Orlando Brown Jr. is playing significantly better because over the last 2 regular season games, that's what you want to see. And I like the fact they're going up against a Denver team that has some success getting after the quarterback so we can get some sort of competition there because we know he's going to get it the following week. He and Andrew Wiley against Max Crosby if Max Crosby plays in this game against the Raiders. But yeah, Orlando Brown Jr., I think he graded out like 88 last time these guys played when I just looked up those numbers. But I would caution fans to not look through the lens of what you expected Orlando Brown Jr. because of the talk all season, but of what he's done lately. And it might change your opinion a little bit as you're watching, hopefully, because we need him to play well if the Chiefs are going to go deep into the playoffs.
Yep. 88.4 pass blocking grade against the Broncos. The next week against Houston was 78.6. And then last week against the Seattle Seahawks, it was a 90.3. So really nice grades. Has only allowed 4 pressures over those games, 3 against Houston. And so if you look at those 2 games against Denver and Seattle, only 1 pressure allowed, no stacks allowed. So obviously this is a much better showing than what we've been talking about throughout the year. So regardless of it, what the reason, whatever you think this is, it's good to see your left tackle playing better the way that he has.
And the good news is the people in that building, if he was playing through an injury and he was playing at like 70%, I have no idea. I'm just throwing this out there that there's always another explanation or another set of variables that you might not know that's out there. Maybe he is and has been playing injured or playing through some stuff that the coaching staff, the support staff, all those guys know about. And I don't want to say they reward him for it, but if him at 70% is still better than putting Tooney and moving guys around, that's a benefit. Doesn't mean they're going to sign him to extension because of it, but it means once he starts to feel a little bit better, he's starting to play better. That's what we want to see at this point in the season. All right, let's get to the last one. And it's just this one simple word: discipline.
Yeah. It's just the matchup is discipline. And I don't have a ton of insider PFF numbers for this one. I mean, they missed 9 tackles against the Broncos the last time they played them. They've got to shore up the tackling. Yeah. The time of possession battle was way closer than it needed to be. I think I have that right here. It was 30 minutes, 13 seconds for the Chiefs, 29 minutes, 47 seconds for the Denver Broncos. It did not need to be that close. I mean, you're up on this team 27-0. You've got to be able to take care of the ball a little bit better. And there were a couple of instances during those first two interceptions with Mahomes where it's like, hey, you could have leaned on Isaiah Pacheco a little bit more. Now, the time that it was in the game, it was a 2-minute drill, especially that second interception. It was a 2-minute drill. They were trying to get down to get points. I get it. They were keeping their foot on the gas pedal. We complain about teams not doing that all the time. So I don't want to just be this revisionist person who goes back because it didn't work and say like, oh, you should have done it the other way. So I understand what they were doing, but 5 straight dropbacks when you're clearly in possession of this game maybe was a little bit of a reminder. I don't want to say lesson because these guys have forgot more about football this week than I'll ever know. But I think it was a little bit of a reminder of like, hey, when you're up 27-0 in a divisional game, when you yield a touchdown and then it's 27-7, maybe we just we just run it out a little bit. Maybe we just get to the half.
Slow it down.
We just slow it down a little bit, and we make sure that we yield the results that our 27 points that we got in the first half are going to warrant for us. So I just feel like being a little bit more in control, being a little bit more balanced, I would say, on offense versus a team that you should be, right? And I think this is a good practice as well. When you get into the playoffs, there's going to be plenty of times where, sure, it's going to be back and forth against the Dolphins, the Bills, the Bengals, the Ravens, whoever it's going to be. Yeah, it's going to be back and forth for most of the game because these are going to be good teams. But there's going to come a point, at least you hope, to where you go, all right, game's winding down. We're up a score. This is where we've got to pound the rock. We got to be good at it. And for the run game, especially when it comes to being a really good team in postseason play, this is not something that's going to exist, I think, throughout the entire game, right? Especially when you got teams like the Bills, the Bengals, the Chiefs, right? These teams that can be the Dolphins, right? These high-flying offenses. You're going to be passing the ball a lot. Now, that's not to say you're not going to be running the ball at all, but you're going to be passing the ball a lot. But there's going to come a time when you need to run the ball and you have to turn it on. Like the run game has to be good right away. So I think that this is going to be a really great test for the the Kansas City Chiefs running game to say, how much production can we get here? When they need to lean on us, can we show up when we need it? And I think that that's going to be the big point for me. It's just disciplined football. Shore up the tackling. Obviously, don't have the turnovers. Don't lose the turnover battle. But also keep the time and possession in your favor a lot more than you need to, especially against a worse opponent. And when you call upon the run game, let it hit. And you could do it a little bit more often, have some more faith in it to control the game, to control the possession a little bit better than they did in week 14.
Don't worry. I'm going to ask you about the Bengals Bills before this is over.
Okay.
Before we go, because there's going to be a lot of Chiefs fans obviously watching that one. But yeah, for me, I've been saying it the last few weeks, like survive in advance. Just don't get hurt. Just win the football game and move on. I don't care how it looks. That's what it was a couple weeks ago. I'm starting to care a little bit more how it looks because you got two chances left before you go into the playoffs and either play in the wild card round or hopefully if the Bengals can pull it out, then the Chiefs would get that first round bye if they can win over the next couple of weeks. And based on what's happening in Denver and what's happening with the Raiders, that Jared Stidham is starting, that Denzel Perriman's not playing, Chandler Jones is not playing. I don't see a scenario in which the Chiefs don't win that game if it's a number 1 seed is on the line. And so don't get hurt. That's the only thing that can really affect anything. So just don't do anything stupid. Don't put anybody in a bad spot. Stay healthy, be efficient. I'm excited to get Mecole Hardman back on the field. We've only had one game this year because of Kadarius Toney, which you know all about Kadarius Toney being at Florida, but there's only one game that Kadarius Toney and Mecole Hardman played together, and it was that Tennessee game that Kadarius Toney had been with the team for like 3 days. And so we haven't seen a fully healthy, fully available Chiefs offense so far this year. Not that we're going to see a lot of the creative stuff with 2 weeks left to go against teams that they should beat, but I'm excited to see just a well-oiled, efficient performance, even if it means leaning on the running game a little bit and they don't go out and score 35 points. Just don't want anyone to get hurt. But Trevor, before we let you go, want to get your thoughts on the Bills and the Bengals game on Monday night. How do you see this playing out? And it's really hard for me to root for the Bengals. I'm not going to lie, but I'm going to.
You have to. You have to right now. Every Chiefs fan out there has to. You got to do what's right for the team.
I don't
Maybe just the shade of red gets a little bit more orange this week. That's all it is.
I don't want to like the Bills, but like it's hard not to like Josh Allen. I love Mitch
Mhm.
Morse. He's one of my favorite people I've ever been around in covering. So like it's hard to root against them, but like want a first round bye. Like I want home field. I want the games at
Of course.
Arrowhead.
Of
And I
course.
feel very uncomfortable rooting for the Bengals, but sometimes you got to do things you don't want to do.
This is turning out to be the game that we all wanted it to be, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely everything is on the line with this. The Bills have a chance to avoid going to Arrowhead during the playoffs. They have a chance to keep that number 1 seed, to go into the playoffs with full momentum, right? Because they've been playing better lately. And I'll tell you, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, I would have been like, hey, it's going to be a good game. I think the Bengals are going to win. Now, I still think the Bengals are going to win, but it causes, as you just heard, a deep sigh. Like these teams are so damn good. I just have to respect how good Cincinnati has been at home this season. How motivated they are going to be for this game, how incredible that defense has been playing throughout the second half of the season and really the entire season, and just how the offense is clicking on all cylinders now, right? I mean, you've got
Yeah.
Trenton Irwin who's showing up, scoring multiple touchdowns a game, as if teams in the NFL aren't like what, like T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, and Jamar Chase isn't enough. Like now you got to give him this Trenton Irwin guy. So I think that the Bengals are going to win this game. I think it's going to be back and forth to the very end. I think it's going to be an instant classic. It's going to be one of the games of the year. And of course, Monday Night Football means that everybody gets to watch it. So
Yeah.
I think the Bengals are going to win this one. And I've said that the Chiefs are going to get the 1 seed. I'll stick with it, even though all of these teams are playing at an incredible level. It can happen any other way, but I'll say Kansas City. Sorry, not Kansas City. Sorry, Cincinnati is going to beat the Buffalo Bills on Monday.
Love to hear it. And I am really looking forward to Tuesday when all of the Bills and all of the Bengals fans are complaining that the Bills and the Bengals both beat the Chiefs, but somehow they still ended up with the 1 seed because we overcame that loss to the Colts, which I still cannot believe in watching the Indianapolis Colts that the Chiefs lost to the Colts.
The Colts have the
this year.
strangest season of all time, man. It is so well. That's not true. Urban Meyer was a coach last year, but the Colts have an unreal year of ups and downs. So it is funny looking back on it how that game they were able to overcome that one.
If they end up with the 1 seed still, it'll be funny. If not, it's all eyes are going to go back to that game and be like, really,
Yeah,
really, that's what did it.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, man, appreciate it. Again, it's going to be very uncomfortable for Chiefs fans rooting for the Bengals. But if the NFL, for all of the horrible primetime matchups that had probably 6 months ago looked great on paper, that have turned out to be complete duds, they got this one, to your point, absolutely right. Hopefully making up for that. And we'll all be watching it. Again, that's Trevor Sikkema from Pro Football Focus. You can catch him and Mike Renner every weekday at 11 on It's Just Football at Pro Football Focus, sharing great stats like they do on this show for the Chiefs matchups, but all across the NFL. So make sure to check that out. And we appreciate all of you for hanging out with us today. We'll have more content getting you ready for Chiefs and Broncos. Again, go check out the interview that I did with Dr. Amy Patel, the Chiefs 2022 NFL Fan of the Year nominee, for her work with breast cancer research and care and radiology here in the Kansas City area. It's an inspiring story. It's really cool what the NFL is doing and the way that she found out and everything around it. Really cool story there on our sometimes weekly sports and stuff show. But appreciate everybody for hanging out. We'll see you next time.